Come on, you can't get rid of the raisin toast.
Welcome to Founder's Voyage. We are fortunate to have a woman of many abilities speaking with us today. Her virtual CTO startup, Start with Tinni, takes non-technical founders from floundering to flourishing, helping them navigate the technological landscape of today. Both her Ph.D. and her commercial work allowed her to develop formidable technical skills, especially in engineering systems targeted at data-intensive industries. She is the CEO of her own ventures like Abide Space, an early-stage startup focused on enabling intergenerational cooperation through co-living. We are honoured to have Sharmin Choudhury talking to us today.
Tinni's going to kick off our talk today with a little bit of a presentation about her journey, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussion. So we're truly honored to have you as our featured speaker today, Tinni. Thanks so much for being willing to share your journey with all of us, and feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
My background is in research, so I have a PhD in computer science research. I've pretty much worked in research since graduating undergrad. My first job was with a research center where I worked in data preservation, specifically as applied to complex objects, art objects. And after that, I went into commercial development, and I worked with a company that's now been bought out and absorbed, and but at the time was one of the leading software houses here in Brisbane. And their flagship product was all about, being an intensive data management system. And I worked with initially in their sort of research infrastructure group, and then I moved on to their customization group for Energix, which is like a big utilities company here. And then I left that to do my PhD, which was in information retrieval, specifically applied to the motion picture industry, because I actually did my PhD. My PhD was funded, I should say, from a creative industries research center. And so my work was all about how to make the film industry a little bit more efficient, and also how to repackage some of their data so that they could get extra revenue and stuff like that. And then I finished my PhD and went to the UK to do my postdoc, which was in visual analytics, and that was a research funded by the I can't remember the acronym now, but basically the engineering and science funding, the main engineering and science funding body of the UK and the Ministry of Defence. And and after I finished my postdoc, I came back to Australia, and then I was like, okay, I applied for a bunch of other postdocs, but my heart just wasn't in what I was trying to do. So I was trying to do a little bit of research, but then thinking, maybe I should go back to commercial development, and I was just kind of all over the place. So that's when a friend of mine suggested, look, your research has always been in sort of that border between commercialization, because it's always been applied research. So why don't you just go into commercialization, go into startups and stuff like that? So I said, okay, fine. But then there was a lot of things I didn't know about business. So I developed some silly apps on just as a engineering exercise more than anything else. And then I sort of started using those apps to just explore things I didn't know, like marketing, and just commercialization, monetization, and just stuff like that. And that's got me into the startup community here, and just the business community in general. And I quickly found out that there was like my skill set was needed in the community in a very different way than I thought, because I don't know the situation in your local towns, but in Brisbane or in Australia in general, there are a lot of founders and developers. Not founders and developers, but founders, non-technical founders who have great ideas that are born out of what they witnessed in their professions, in their working lives, and they have thought of solutions to their problems, but their solutions have a tech component, but they're not developers. So they can be marketing, they can be sales, they can be they're domain experts, but they are not tech experts. And it usually comes, and so what ends up happening is that sometimes if they have a little bit of capital behind them, they can try and go out there and get a dev team. But then it can be a bit hard communicating, and then even if you get this platform developed externally, there are a lot of I'm sure most people know as startup founders that there are steps from code to marketing that you need to do, and that's not necessarily always obvious to non-tech people. And yeah, so you end up with this quagmire where and in a bit of a communication issue where everybody sort of loses. Like the developer gets frustrated because they think that they're doing the right thing, they produce a system, and then often what the founders have is that they often have a white elephant, something they've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money developing. And then they're like, well, okay, but what do I do with this now? And on the other side, you can have people with great ideas who honestly, genuinely believe that they can get it developed with beer and pizza, And it's like, but no, that's not going to happen. This is a 500-hour project. You may find a student who's willing to put that in as a sort of an exercise, but or maybe but in that case, you have to accept that they're doing you a favor, and this will be on their timeline. So it'll be like a year or 2 years, however long, and it will be a code from a learner. So what are you going to do while the student learns how to do this? And that's assuming you can find the student, and you can, like, I am affiliated with Queensland University of Technology, which is the university I got my Ph.D. from, and they have a project called the Capstone Project, and they do assign you up to four students, IT students, as an internship team, and but okay, you now have a team, but you're still a non-tech developer trying to communicate with students who are learning. There's, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but there's a lot of communication issues there. And also, so that, and so I ended up sort of developing a service, so a consultancy that I call Start With Tinni, and the entire purpose of that is that I become the conduit between non-tech founders and tech people, and sometimes I help them find a cost-effective development teams, by assembling a team of freelancers and things like that. Sometimes I do help them supervise the previously mentioned student internship team, so that both the students learn something while working for the startup, and the startup actually gets something that is usable. And but the marketing and the business and the sales side is on the startup. And yes, and other times it's just to make sure that your tech dollars are being spent wisely and not not going to waste. And all of this, I must say, is at the end of the day in service of my own ideas and my own startup. So I am the co-founder of a startup called Abide. It is in pause, which is beginning to look a little bit like permanent, but just because my co-founder, he had some, just his life got in the way, and so he sort of put it on pause. And unfortunately, with COVID and everything, he hasn't been able to emerge out of that pause fast enough. But we are still but the idea is solid, or rather I should say the problem we were looking to solve is still a problem. And so I am hopeful that eventually it will become unpaused. And if not that startup, there are plenty of problems to solve and plenty of other things to do. And so at the end of the day, what I'm actually trying to achieve by running Start with Tinni is keeping my lights on, but also making connections and also learning things that I don't have, which is sales, marketing, and monetization. So it's a bit of a long game for me. That's been my journey so far.
I'm wondering if you could just rewind us a little bit more than that and tell us about your experience growing up and some of the early life events and mentors that you feel influenced your personal and professional development.
Okay, that is actually a bit of... okay, so I should probably mention that there are a lot of entrepreneurs and business people in my family. We are notoriously bad at taking orders. At least many people in my family are notoriously bad at taking orders. That said, we also have a lot of career professionals. So my mom's a teacher. Before that, she was a medical chemist and a chemistry researcher. But since immigrating to Australia, she's become a teacher. My dad was a chemistry professional. My grandma was a doctor. My grandfather was an engineer, but he was one of those people who was notoriously bad at taking orders. So he tried his hand in a number of businesses, and one of the reasons I actually did my postdoc in the UK was because that's where my mom grew up. She studied she went to high school, undergrad, and her master's all in the UK, because my grandparents worked in the UK for some time, and before that they were working in Libya and Saudi Arabia, and I was born in Bangladesh. We are from Bangladesh, and after they'd done their world tour of working, they went back to Bangladesh, where my mom and my dad got married, and I was born. But eventually, my mom moved us to Australia for better opportunities and education, and she just got sick of it, sick of Bangladesh things. But going back to Bangladesh now, I have a lot of cousins and stuff like that who are running factories and running their own businesses, shops and stuff, because as I said, we have a streak of just we like being our own bosses. I guess it's the best way of putting it. I don't know what it says about us, but so I guess you can probably say that that's always been a factor. Like, I mean, in terms of safety and security, yes, there has always been, I'll just get a good job at a big corporation sort of thing. But at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, but cousin Dave, he's opened up a shop and is doing stuff. So I guess you can say that I've always been in an environment which has been like, okay, education is important. Professional careers are important. And but yeah, sometimes you just don't want to take orders. So you become your own boss. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think very much so. Thank you for going through that with us. I can definitely understand that mentality, wanting to sort of chart your own course or sort of be your own boss. I think is something that a lot of people in the community understand and feel similarly. I was hoping, if you wouldn't mind, could you talk a little bit about Abide, the idea that got you into the bootcamp? I understand it's currently on pause, but I think it addresses an interesting problem that exists in other places in the world as well.
Yeah, so Abide, the idea came out of a workshop that my university, QUT, Queensland University of Technology, where the bootcamp actually took place, ran, which was called In Cahoots. And it was basically about bringing together young people and older people and to solve problems together. And one of the problems that emerged from that workshop was one of living situations, like as the meme goes, the rent is too damn high. And this is a problem for young people who are just trying to start off their career, but also for older Australians who often, once the kids have left and stuff, they often find themselves in a house that's full of their memories, but that is actually too big for them to live in. So the idea was that how do you avoid older Australians from having to downsize and go into a house where they don't have that memory, and often in a new neighborhood where they might not have the connections, or going into a retirement home. And how do you prevent having to make that change, before as long as possible? And so one solution was, multi-generational living situations. So, but specifically multi-generation living situation with non-family members. And so one thing, and Abide was exploring bringing together graduate students. So, people 21 and 21 plus, graduate students, or just really young professionals, and facilitating them renting from older Australians who may have a house with extra room and extra space now that their own kids had moved out. Now, the reason we were focusing on non-family member multi-generational living situations was because there are some issues with multi-generational of family members living in the same house, because you can't, not everybody has the best relationship with their family members. But that aside, there can be some issues of whose house it is if you houses it. So we wanted to go, okay, let's get around that and see what we can do around that. And also, from the young people's perspective, it could be that they don't have the option of living with their own family because their own family is not in town. So Abide was about first unlocking the rooms of unlocking the underused resources by going to older Australians and going, hey, do you have extra room in your house that you're comfortable renting? And what is it that we can do to facilitate you to put that room in the market? Because a lot of people don't do it because they're concerned about security, they're concerned about communication, and so and from a younger Australians, they also have concerns like is there going to be security issues? How are they going to communicate with these older Australians who may have older person who may have vastly different life experiences, hobbies, and interests? And how do you divide chores? So even once you have actually found someone, the nitty-gritties of living together comes into it. And so Abide, so we were exploring the model of how do we solve this? What tools do we have to develop to facilitate intergenerational communication, intergenerational living, and what support? And that was the other thing that we weren't going to just place and forget, which is say something like flatmates.com do, but it was going to be like an active situation where Abide members were going to have a continuous dialogue between each other and the platform to make sure that they were getting their money's worth in terms of the percentage we were going to keep as a management fee from the rent. And that was okay. Tutorials, communication skills, support, and just making sure that chores are getting done and that everybody in a shared situation is happy, safe, and all those things. It's a complex problem, and because it's a two-sided marketplace, which are notoriously difficult to establish, we just found it. We just couldn't solve the problem where we had a lot of people on the demand side who were ready to find rooms, but we were having some difficulty on the supply side, just because we didn't have the right networks in place. We did try to find another founder who might have more sway with older Australian or in the supply side, but that didn't quite work out. But I hate to say this, but COVID might actually help us going forward, because COVID, I don't know how COVID is being handled wherever you guys are, but in Australia it has created some interesting situations in the real estate space. So it's still being played out, and as I said, my co-founder is not back yet, but I do intend to reach out to him in the new year and go, hey, do you want to look into this now that our government support are supposed to end in March? That's like when some of the things we have in place, like JobKeeper, increased job seeker, and these sort of social payments are set to end, and also some of the rules around liquidation is also set to expire in March. And and I have an unfortunate feeling that a concept like Abide is going to become a little bit important in 2021, just so that older Australians can actually retain homes that they have built as their nest egg, and younger Australians don't end up homeless. So the new year might be a good time to see if we can unpause it. But obviously, because Abide is pre-revenue, we have to, like, both me and my co-founder have to be in a place where we can, push Abide along, without going under ourselves. So, I don't know if that's answers your question, but that's Abide. It's an interesting idea, but two-sided marketplaces. Not a startup I would recommend to most people.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I mean, some of the best ideas though are not ones you can just, jump into. You have to bob and weave and test, right? So I love the way that your mind thinks about multiple angles, and I can see how your virtual CTO thinking through the layers could help you with this idea when you do come back to it. And it's definitely something that exists, as you and I kind of privately spoke, in other sections of the world. So we'd love to hear how that continues to develop, and if there's a way that we can, help in any way too. So jumping gears just a little bit, I do want to hear more about your work as a virtual CTO. And I was wondering how long you decide to stay with a particular company. How do you, to use the phrase, kind of pass the torch back to the company and exit? Because I love on your LinkedIn that you say, if you haven't found your forever CTO yet, I think that even though not every company would find that sort of scenario, I appreciate that you're helping them build towards that. So do you have kind of like an end point in mind when you start out, or how do you figure that out?
Well, the ideal endpoint, and I'm yet to reach that with any startup at the moment, is that the startup gets so big that it requires 100% of attention. And if we're at that stage, then you have to make the decision: do you want to stick with it, stick with this company, or get somebody else? Now, I would probably say that if a company gets to a point where it gets like 100% of a CTO's attention, then that's the time to go out there and hire a CTO that that's worked in a medium enterprise or a small enterprise, or was a Fortune 500 CTO, and is looking to jump ship into another growing company and get it to that stage. So that would be the ideal, that I would sort of sit in interviews, make sure that they get the right person, both technologically and culturally, because ideally at that point I would know the engineering team better than anybody else. And so it's like, okay, we can't have somebody coming in who's going to, blow up the engineering culture and, I don't know, ban the raisin toast or something. Sorry, I should mention that I mentioned that I worked in here. The company was called Mincom, which was a leading software house in Brisbane. And one of their perks was raisin toast. It wasn't much, but you could get unlimited raisin toast as engineers in the break room. Apparently, at some point, management tried to take it away, and the engineers walked out. So that's what I mean. Like, you don't want to hire a CTO who's like, okay, we're gonna get rid of the raisin toast, because come on, you can't get rid of the raisin toast. So ideally, that would be the ideal situation, that the company's gotten to a stage where it needs a CTO at full-time CTO at 100% capacity, and then I help pick the right person who gels with the engineering team, and I go on to the next adventure. Unless it's a startup I really, really like, and in which case I was like, or a company I really, really like, then I guess it's on the plates that I would cut all my other commitments, but that would be a huge ask, because other commitments. But I haven't actually reached that point. Where I have exited is like I've exited Your Happy Place shortly after completing the MIT bootcamp, and the reason was that we reached a milestone. We got a version of their idea out the door. Now, Your Happy Place was based on the research of an urban designer and psychologist, and his research was about how outdoor spaces influences our mood. He felt that most outdoor spaces are designed for extroverts because so his company, I should say, the holding company, I guess, is called Personality and Place, because and that was literally it. Like, his idea was that most outdoor spaces are approved by extroverts and they're for extroverts, and that they can be unappealing and unwelcoming to people who are not extroverts. You know, they're too loud. They're for introverts. They can be, you know, there are other issues. So how do you highlight them, and how do you design better urban spaces that are more inclusive? So one of his big problems as an urban designer was just getting data, because you know, but one way is just to go out there and talk to random people using a space and go, okay, what do you think of this space? And you know, random surveys can be not very good in terms of results, because you can you know, you can catch a person in a bad day, and you know, just or lots of people, like as I was saying, you know, extroverts versus introverts. An introvert is less likely to talk to a random person canvassing the streets than an extrovert. You know, so you're getting skewed data if you believe that personality plays a big part in your enjoyment of space. So one of the solutions was, well, how do you get people to tell you how you feel about space? What can you give them in return? And so I sort of suggested that one thing we can do is we can create an app for recording emotions, and we can tie that emotional diary, emotional journal aspect to location. Is that, how do you feel as you're eating lunch at a restaurant? And, you know, is the restaurant making you happy, or what emotions is it actually invoking in you now? And the idea was that there was a movement, and there still is, of journaling, of being more emotionally aware, and so we could we could go into that trend and you know, create an app that can help us gather data that we can anonymize and relay to city councils, and with the ultimate goal of being creating better urban spaces. But for the user, it would be about creating an emotionscape of the city, so that you know what part of the cities best suit your personality type. So the app that I designed had like a personality quiz section, which you took to get like an ocean personality assessment, and then that became part of you know, and then you just went out into the world and you try to log your day, and then ultimately the goal was that, you know, you would do analysis and you give meaningful feedback to the users to help them navigate their day better with emotions and everything like that. And so I started because I started developing a React Native code base for that app, but eventually also I'm helped Your Happy Place get a freelancer, just because, you know, getting me to develop at my rate is not cost effective. for for anything except the the first run. And so we got a freelancer and who took my code base and finished the app, and we released an Android app version of it. And as we reach a milestone, I usually evaluate whether we are being mutually beneficial. And I kind of felt that I was doing a lot of things that were a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. And the reason for that was that the CEO and founder of Your Happy Place, the people personality company, was not as familiar with the entrepreneurial journey. He came from a background of small business and partnerships, and unfortunately, that does not align perfectly with entrepreneurship. And I was like, and I've spent a lot of time just explaining the entrepreneurial process to him, and it was also very difficult because we kept having these circular conversations, because we had a lot of communication issues. Like, I would send emails, he would miss the emails, but then because he missed the emails, he would come back to me and go, "You didn't tell me this," and then I would have to go find the email and say, "Okay, I did explain this." And so there was like a communication mismatch that was exacerbated by the fact that we weren't in the same city. Like, he lived a little bit further down south towards to the coast. So I was like, you know what? I think that I've gotten the first version out, so you can now show a working app to investors and potential collaborators and show them what exactly you're trying to do. But I think that you're better off going to the local entrepreneurial hub, because the local governments and the state government in Queensland here have put in a lot of money to developing infrastructure around entrepreneurship. So, and the Gold Coast did actually have an innovation hub. So I directed him to the innovation hub and said that, like, there's a lot you have to learn, that I kind of feel that I'm not the person to be teaching it to you. So please go to the innovation hub and and then I don't know, it might be better if you found like somebody else who's who's better able to gel with him communication wise and just thought process wise, because and also who understands personalities a little bit better, or takes personality tests a little bit more seriously than I do, because that was another problem. He took personality tests very seriously because obviously that was his background and that's what he did, whereas I didn't. So that was also kind of a mismatch. So it was an interesting I liked the emotion logging side of it because that was something I was interested in, but that didn't work if I didn't also believe in personalities. And so that often happens. So you get to a milestone with any startups, and it could even be your own startup, and you go, do I still believe in this idea as it has morphed into during the journey? Because often the product you put to market is not the product you signed up to make, if that makes sense. And so as you reach milestones, I think it's always important to go, are you mutually adding things? And I kind of felt that being part of that startup was no longer adding anything to me, and I guess I was still adding something to the startup in the sense that I was providing my tech skills and stuff, but I kind of felt that I was occupying a space that could be better occupied by somebody else. So I think I actually did write up a blog post about that, and I think I said it was addition through subtraction, because I really felt that we had reached a point where we were gonna add more to each other by just parting ways. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's like just reevaluate at each milestone whether I'm adding something or not to the startup, and also whether being affiliated with the startup was adding anything to me, and then they're just deciding yes and no.
Absolutely answers the question. Tinni, thank you so much for that. I think the ability to see when is the end of a relationship like that without needing to get to any sort of explosive point is such a powerful skill. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They feel if they've started on something, they have to take it absolutely to the end. Being able to recognize that point at which you're like, all right, this is no longer providing value both to me, and someone else in this position might be able to provide more valuable to the company. I think that's such a powerful point. I hope it's okay, I did add the quote from you, come on, you can't get rid of the raisin toast, to the quotes channel, because I think that is absolutely perfect. And I love the story you just told us behind it. One thing I was hoping to, if you wouldn't mind, to help us sort of understand the biases and pressures you've had to work through in your entrepreneurial journey.
I guess okay, so yeah, so I have this interesting story. I actually don't remember what his startup was about, but I heard a pitch in the startup in one of the so there's co-working space here called River City Labs, and before the plague, they used to have hosted like a pitch and bites thing on the first Friday of the month, and so I usually try and go there if I can, and so I went there that particular Friday. We had some nibbles, and things, and we heard the pitches, and this guy pitched something. I don't remember what it was, but he sort of said, "I need help tech-wise." So afterwards, I went and gave him my card, and for some weird reason, we somehow ended up having this conversation, which quickly became clear that he was asking me if I was a sales recruiter or something for a software house in India. I was like, okay, what part of anything I just told you gave you that idea? But yeah, so I guess that was a weird prejudice to have. That was like, okay, I wasn't actually, I mean, sure, but they have really good freelancers in India, and it's a cost-effective place to build things, but no, I'm not repping a software development house from there, but okay. Needless to say, he didn't call me, and I'm not sure I would have picked up the phone after that. So I don't know. That's not a very interesting story, but the one that I came to mind first, it was just that doesn't usually happen to me. Weird as it sounds. So that was like, okay. But I don't remember his pitch idea either. So, and I have a very good memory. So clearly it was a dumb idea too.
It's a dumb idea.
I don't remember. I'm sorry. Maybe it was a good idea, but I generally do tend to remember most things. So,
That's okay. I think there's value if just looking back at that makes you smile and laugh too. So I appreciate that. So when you and I spoke, I had this what I thought was a great analogy of like how new startups or people with a great ideal kind of hold it too close to the chest And it's like a cocoon. And if the cocoon is wrapped too tight, then they can't let in the things that they need that idea to flourish, and eventually become this beautiful butterfly. So I was wondering, if you want to expound upon that a little bit and give advice to entrepreneurs, that are looking to launch a business maybe in the next 3 to 6 months on finding the right tension to maintain their cocoon at.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I'm mindful of the time, so I'll try and keep this brief. That analogy came from an experience I had this year where I was referred to a founder who had been struggling for 5 years to launch a tech platform. So we spoke over the phone a few times, and exchanged emails. And this founder was quite weary of their idea going out into the world and somebody co-opting them. But the thing was that their idea wasn't so unique, and also there was no first mover advantage, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know how big a splash they've made in the US, but a big tech story unicorn here in Australia is Afterpay. They recently broke the $100 mark on the stock exchange and they launched at $1 in 2016. So that's pretty big growth, and for a company in 4 years. And Afterpay is a buy now, pay later company. They're not the only ones in the market. They are as big as they are because they moved first, but there are other companies, and almost all of them have made it to IPO. They're in the stock market. And so even though Afterpay moved first, their idea, and I'm not even sure if they were the first to market. They're just the one that advertised the most. So please don't take my word that they were the first. But what I'm saying is that the idea got copied a lot, but the pie was big enough for a lot of different companies. And so this particular founder's idea wasn't, they didn't need to be first to market, and they wouldn't have been, because that kind of idea, they had competition. But because they were so protective of it, it became unworkable, because because I couldn't even share their public website with another client of mine without them going, "Oh no, that other client's going to steal our idea." And it's like, it's your public website. It's sometimes you get to you find a founder, and you know that relationship is not going to work. Even if the founder is successful later on, their relationship with you is not going to work, because I don't know, and I kind of understand where this person was coming from. They've been working in this idea for 5 years. It hasn't gotten anywhere. They had some encounters where they shared their idea with a developer who developed some code bases, but then there was a disagreement with payment, and the developer apparently tried to sell the code base to somebody. And I think that was like a misunderstanding there, because I didn't feel the founder fully understood the value they were bringing to the business. Because who cares if somebody sells your tech base, which isn't necessarily tries to sell your tech base to somebody else, because unless it's like a revolutionary algorithm, and this wasn't, it's not going to do anything, because I have seen plenty of good ideas go out there and die just because they don't have the right contacts to land the sales. They don't have the right contacts to make it into the boardroom of and in front of the people who make the decision makers, who will write the checks. So, if you think that all you have is an idea, then I don't know. I say that, but I am actually currently recruiting a UI UX designer for a startup where where there's one aspect of their idea which is crucial to their success, but even with that business, they have competition who do similar sort of things, and it's not a new concept. But yeah, so it's but in that case, the founder was able to raise capital and investment and get me and other people because he went out and talked about it. He talked about his idea. He talked about, he had a non-NDA pitch for it that he was willing to give. And he didn't get defensive just because somebody might have said, hey, look, talk to somebody else who might be able to help them. And I think that's it. Don't be paranoid about people trying to steal from you, because if you keep your idea or too close, then you miss opportunities. You miss people who can help you. No unicorn was, unfortunately or fortunately, no unicorn was born in a closed room. You have to go out and find the unicorn egg, and for that you need to go on a magical journey. And yes, you might meet some hags who try to poison you, or might meet a dragon who tries to eat you, but that's the journey you have to go in to find the unicorn and egg. Do unicorns born from an egg? I don't know. Sorry, I got my mythology mixed up. I just realized. Sorry, it's actually an old Indian saying where you go, "Ghoda dim." It means horse's egg, and that obviously means that it's something that doesn't exist. And I started going that I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm getting unicorns and dragons mixed up, because unicorns are horses and they don't have eggs. so yes, but find a pregnant unicorn. There you go. That's a good analogy. If you want to have a unicorn of your own, you need to go out there and find a pregnant unicorn. I must point out it's 2 a.m. So if my analogy went off the rails, it's because it's 2 a.m.
That's fair enough, I think. Now, as you've just pointed out, it is 2 a.m. and we've just come up to the hour point. So I thought, if you don't mind, just sort of, if you have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yep.
We tend to generally ask people if they can sort of give us some of their words of wisdom or a best lesson that they've learned, just to sort of wrap things up from your perspective.
I guess the best lesson I've found is just find the right people and communication. Even if you find somebody completely amazing, if you find that you can't communicate with them properly, then that's not the right person for you. Or you can find like a sales genius, but you find that you can't establish communication channel. It doesn't matter. You're better off finding like a salesperson with average level skills with whom you can communicate properly. I know it sounds weird, but communication, I found, was a key to success. And honestly, likewise, if you have to get the right message for your consumers and investors, just communication. That's sounds cliche, but I that was the lesson that I've learned, that if the right communication is very necessary. And also the other thing is knowing your value. Now I have this problem myself where I go, okay, this person, I gave them my card, but they didn't call me back. But then it's sort of like that. If somebody doesn't see value in you, then that's fine. Just go look for somebody who can see the value you bring, and try and see, what value they can give to you. So don't shut doors and stuff like that. So yeah, just know what you're bringing to the to the plate. Yeah, and be happy with what you're bringing. And if you're not happy, then obviously work on your skills and things until you are happy. But if you're happy with what you're bringing and you know that it is valuable, but somebody can't see it, then that's probably not the right person for you, right relationship for you. You know, those are the two lessons I've learned. And yeah, and they can both be very hard, because you can often put up with a bad team member who you can't communicate with just because you need their skill set, and you can sort of freak out. And I do that all the time, where you're like, oh, am I providing enough value, or why didn't this person see what value I could add? But that's just life. Not everybody is going to appreciate what you bring, and you don't want to waste your time trying to convince somebody that you're valuable if it's pretty clear that they're not seeing it. So
those are wise words, and I have trouble seeing how someone wouldn't find your advice valuable, but I know that everyone sees through a different lens, so I appreciate that you're able to let go when you need to. Thank you so much for all your time and for doing this so late into the night with us, Tinni. We really are very grateful, and I feel I'm at the beginning of my day, and this totally has me fired up to go do all the things I need to do. So we want that to pay both ways. So please keep us posted on how we can support you too. And we really appreciate everyone that joined us today. Spencer and I feel super fortunate to be part of this community.
This has been Nancy and Spencer on Founders Voyage Weekly Podcast. Our speaker each week can be reached through our Discord server. Our intro and outro music is from the song Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band. We'll be back again next week for another episode. Until then, have a great day and continue your voyage.